Marco, please call the roll. Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller-Herrera?
Present.
Mr. Dodson?
Present.
Mr. Mastriani?
Present.
Mrs. Collins? Present. 4 present, 1 absent. Thank you, Ms. Marco. A quorum is present. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Marco, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have 3 public hearings tonight, so I'm going to keep my remarks brief. First of all, I'd like to thank the Highway, the 3 water departments, the Parks Department, and any other employees that worked during the last ice and snowstorm. I think with the ice that came first, it made it very, very hard, but they did a great job clearing our roads. I also want the residents to know that we've had a resignation from our Zoning Board of Appeals. So if anyone is interested in serving our community in this capacity, please send me a letter or an email. My email address is simply mcollins@rotterdamny.org. And lastly, I hope that many of the residents come to the next public hearing of our comprehensive plan. The one at February 17th, we really got some good suggestions from the residents about what they wanted to see in their town, especially moving forward. So I ask you that once we have that date, we'll post it on the website, and I hope we get a large turnout for it. Okay? All right. I open the public hearing on introductory law, local law number 2 of 2022, a local law to amend Chapter 26, residency requirements of the town code. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak? Oh, I'm sorry, Chapter 60.
Pete, you say 903, so I'm not sure. Do you want to talk on the...
It's about a third of the way through this half a tree here. It says 903, non-discrimination and harassment, including sexual harassment.
Do
in the
you know what resolution it is?
I think it's attached to,
Any of the bids?
it's something I guess that's in place already,
Okay,
but it has to be mentioned because I guess it's referring to bidding.
okay.
Or something.
So I think it's going to be the privilege of the floor for him when he speaks.
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be
Okay,
privileged.
I'll let you know then. Then that's it. There's nobody.
So anybody want to speak on this local law that didn't sign the sheet? All right. I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson, second.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. Clerk will call the roll. Mr. Cristo is absent. Mrs. Miller-Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins? Yes. 4 yes and 1 absent. Closed. I open the public hearing on introductory local law number 3 of 2022, a local law to amend Chapter 266, Section 266-46, to add a stop sign at Puritan Drive at Bayberry Road. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak? No. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this that didn't sign? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson, second.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. Clerk will call the roll. Mr. Cristo is absent. Mrs. Miller-Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins? Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Motion passed. Okay. I open the public hearing on introductory local law number 4 of 2022, a local law to amend Chapter 266, Section 266-52, to designate no parking anytime on certain portions of Lawn Avenue. Ms. Marco, is there anyone there who wishes to speak?
No.
Okay, is there anyone here that wishes to speak on it that didn't sign up? Okay, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Mastriani, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, a second by Mr. Dodson, clerk will call the roll. Mr. Cristo is absent. Mrs. Miller-Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins? Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Motion passed. Okay, we'll now move to privilege of the floor. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak? And please remember to keep your remarks to around 4 minutes. Pete?
Good evening, Madam Supervisor, members of the board, other members here. Just really wanted to read something into the record, part of this packet here. It's called 903 Non-Discrimination and Harassment, including sexual harassment in the workplace. Specifically, I'd like to read off the section, part of the section that's listed as prohibited activity. No elected official, employee, or other individuals covered by this policy shall engage in any of the following. I will read the 3 items that are specifically mentioned here. Harassment, unwanted, unreasonable verbal or physical conduct directed towards or affecting any person that disturbs, frightens, insults, threatens, intimidates, demeans, or offers that other person, or offends that other person, that continues or is repeated after request to cease. And that has the purpose of a purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with a person's work performance, otherwise adversely affecting an individual's employment opportunities, communications, as well as any biased harassment, sexual harassment. Specifically, bias-based harassment, harassment that denigrates, offends, or shows hostility, aversion towards an individual on the basis of sex, including gender identity, and the status of being transgender, sexual orientation, race, color, national origin, religion, disability, pregnancy, age, marital status, veteran status, military status, arrest, conviction, genetic information, or predisposing characteristics, domestic victim status, or any other protected status. Bias-based harassment includes, but not limited to, I have no idea what that word is, and that's fine, slurs or negative stereotyping, threatening, intimidating, or hostile actions, denigrating jokes and written, electronic, or graphic material that denigrates, ridicules, objectifies, or shows hostility, aversion, or contempt towards an individual or group, and that is placed on walls, bulletin boards, lockers, or elsewhere on the town premises, vehicles, equipment, or is circulated in the workplace, including through electronic means. Discrimination. The town of Rotterdam is an equal opportunity employer. The town does not lawfully discriminate on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, race, color, national origin, so on and so forth. Okay? I would just like to say that members of the board, employees, and so on and so forth should be respectful of all of those categories listed. And these are, this is a serious thing for regardless of what your specific group might be. I think we need to be mindful of that, and I would just like to remind the board and employees of the town that this has been in place for quite a time. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. Is there anybody else who wants to speak up? Privilege of the floor who didn't sign up on the form?
Mr. Supervisor?
Yep.
Yeah, if somebody wants to speak.
This is Mr. Godlewski. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes, I can, Mr. Godlewski.
Okay. Needless to say, I would have loved to have been there tonight, but I have some issues I have to take care of. I'm going to send all the board members some information on something that the United States Assembly and Senate have been working on for over a year that I was not aware of. I'm not sure whether the board members were or not, but it has to do with accessory dwelling housing. It's a law that's before the New York State Assembly and Senate. And basically what it boils down to, and you can read my email, all right, I typed it all out because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get in on the phone. And my concern is this. It's basically going to be, in its current format, a law, a state law that's going to mandate, and I use the word mandate, to towns, cities, and whatever, that wherever you have a residential property, it will allow the owner of that property to put an additional dwelling in there. All right? And you have to read the law because it's very detailed, but that also includes a rental for that property. So in essence, what it's doing is, when you have residential housing, it's automatically going to allow somebody to go to the town, and the town's authority under this law is just administerial. You basically have no authority because the state is laying out what you have to do, and in my opinion, it's overruling the homeowner authority. I am definitely not in favor. I know what the impetus is. The big cities, housing is astronomical, and they're trying to get more housing units per structure, which is okay for Albany, Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, and New York City. But the way the law is currently constructed, in my opinion, it's going to ruin our residential neighborhoods. But now your residents can be turned into rental units. Now, the uncomfortable part is that Senator Henchy, who is our senator, is one of the sponsors of the bill. And I guess what I'm asking the board to do is to review the information that I've just sent you. Okay? And I would appreciate it that you take some type of administrative action to notify our elected officials that this will be very harmful to the town of Rotterdam. Like I said, I would have liked to have been there tonight, but due to circumstances under control, I can't. But I know you're busy and I'm going to hold you up, but I sent you all the information, and I hope you'll review it and come to the same conclusion that I did. And that's all I have, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you very much. Megan, is there anyone else? And no one?
I can't hear you. Got a terrible connection.
I think that's it.
Before I close public privilege of the floor, is there anyone else here who wishes to speak who might not have signed up? Okay. I'm going to close privilege of the floor, and we'll now move on to our resolutions. Our first resolution is Resolution 84 of the year 2022. Clerk will read.
Requesting bids for chlorine gas.
Okay, any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. Anything on the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent. Passes.
Our next item is Resolution number 85 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Requesting bids for highway materials, concrete block caps, manhole grates, and frames.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent. Passes.
Resolution number 86 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Requesting bids for highway materials, crushed limestone, gravel, and sand.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. Anything on the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Motion passes. Next resolution is resolution number 87 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Requesting bids for the tree cutting and removal services.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. And on the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent, passes.
Next resolution is resolution number 88 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Requesting bids for highway pipes, water and end sections, round corrugated plastic pipe, and plastic underground perforated pipe.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will read the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent, passes.
Next motion is, the next resolution is resolution number 89 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To amend and restate Section 1 of Resolution Number 21.22 of the year 2022.
Okay. Any discussion? I do. I'd like to read into the minutes the letter that I sent to all the town board members before the agenda went out. Town Board of the Town of Rotterdam, Town Clerk of the Town of Rotterdam. Resolution number 89.22. Dear Town Board members and Town Clerk, in accordance with the New York General Municipal Law and the Town of Rotterdam Code of Ethics, I am disclosing to you that resolution number 89.22, currently on the agenda for the Town Board meeting scheduled for February 23rd, 2022, would appoint my husband, Clark Collins, as part-time water treatment plant operator. If approved, my husband's rate of pay would be $35 per hour. Because this resolution would appoint my husband, I am providing this written disclosure that I may be deemed to have an interest in this appointment. This disclosure is being sent to the town board, the town clerk, and I am asking that it be included within the agenda materials in advance of the meeting. I am also asking that this letter be included in the official record of the town board's February 23rd, 2022 meeting. Finally, in addition to making written disclosure in this letter, I have also chosen to recuse myself from any discussion or vote on this resolution. I will not be participating in any discussion or vote on this matter at the February 23rd, 2022 meeting. With that, I am going to be leaving the dais. Deputy Supervisor Dodson will be taking over.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Yes, Deputy Supervisor. I'm wondering how we're going to prevent any conflict of interest between the supervisor and her husband in the future as it relates to who's called in first to work as the backup water treatment plant operator, who's going to sign vouchers, how we're going to ensure that she has no involvement or influence over those issues.
There was a conversation relative to who would be assigned first, and the first call-in was Ian. Clark is the second call-in.
Who was involved in that conversation?
The conversation could be right here. Hold on a second, let me just see.
It's my understanding too that getting these two guys on to be able to be called in is going to save the town significant money rather than using the engineering contractor.
I understand, but
Yeah,
my
so let's
understanding from speaking with Councilmember Christie was that Supervisor Collins made the suggestion and that her husband was not going to have any pay as part of this agreement, and that changed when the draft agenda came out, so.
We're not aware of that conversation. So the bottom line is we have a water treatment plant operator who's full-time. There are times when he takes vacation, week here, week there. The town in the past has used a consultant to come in to do operation of our treatment plant during his vacation. It comes at significant cost to the town. In an effort to save monies to the town, given the short duration of time that it's required, this resolution allows 2 of our previous operators that did phenomenal jobs operating our treatment plant to step into that position for a short duration to run our treatment plant. It provides us redundancy and allows us again to meet the health department requirements for operation of our water system.
So my question still hasn't been answered.
No other response.
So we have no procedure set in place to insulate the supervisor from an ethics violation related to signing vouchers and the call-ins and all discussion relative to her husband's employment with the town.
We have a comptroller that audits any vouchers that come in through our town. There's multiple levels of audit and control relative to vouchers. Given the procedures, I'll say that we have with any bills in our town, we have the opportunity at any time to audit bills independent of our supervisor.
So the answer is no procedure has been put in place specifically to prevent the supervisor from coming across vouchers and other items related to the employment of her husband.
Not true.
It's my
So the answer
understanding.
is yes, there is. And
Oh,
so
that's
I'd
not
like to know
true.
what it is. I mean, we have ethics issues.
The ethics
She needs
code-
to be
Hold on.
insulated from this as an issue.
The ethics
One at a
code-
time.
The ethics code would apply,
Right.
and if Supervisor Collins were to approve a voucher, authorize payment for her husband, then the ethics code would be applicable, and
Right.
the chips would fall where they fall.
So we
As-
haven't
as
set
you-
up a
as you-
procedure to make
as
sure
you
that
saw-
doesn't happen.
As you saw here, she recognizes it and understands that there is a potential conflict there. She disclosed that in writing. She made it part of the agenda materials in advance of the meeting, as in the case of anybody that has a family member that might get paid from a town contract. She disclosed it, and she recused herself. In fact, she left the day as.
I'm not
I
calling
think the
into
ethics code. I think the
question.
ethics code would certainly apply, and if there was an issue, then there's a procedure for that.
Yeah, so Samantha, what is your issue? What is your issue relative to her husband Clark, who was our water treatment operator for decades? Okay, so what you're insinuating in here is that the supervisor does not have the wherewithal to allow a voucher to come through in our town and that would abuse our system relative to a week's worth of vacation to allow her husband to gain in some sort of payment, as opposed to recognizing the fact that he's an operator that operated our water system for decades, and in the best interest of the town, he and a former operator are willing to step up to the plate here and offer their assistance to our town at a reasonable amount of money. This turns into, geez, there's some willingness on the supervisor's part, according to you, that's going to be used in the supervisor's favor, even though she's disclosed the conflict here. Do you have an objection to the fact that we're proposing to use Ian here or Clark as a water operator?
I have no problem with either one of them. My question is, how are we going to insulate the supervisor from liability related to it, and have we set up a procedure to make sure that doesn't happen? Somebody accidentally leaves a voucher on her desk for signature, she has an ethics violation on her hands. We don't need that kind of publicity. We need to make sure we're doing things above what is expected. And I just don't understand why we haven't thought of this when we've been planning this for a couple weeks. I mean, I believe the town attorney just indicated, yes, it's an ethics issue. And
So-
she did absolutely recuse herself on this
Right.
vote.
So
And I
again, you're
appreciate-
insinuating.
You just asked me not to interrupt you. I would
You're-
ask you
you're
not to,
ins- you're
Mr. Dodson, I would
insinuating-
ask you not to interrupt me the way you asked me not to
Keep-
interrupt you.
keep
But you
going.
continue to talk. Ethics violations are a problem. I would not want to see that. I want to know what procedures we're putting in place to make sure that it's not an issue. We're
Samantha,
talking
are you
about
against
maybe-
it or for it? That's the bottom line. Are you,
Against an
now,
ethics
you're being,
violation for our town.
listen, once again, easily dealt with. Are you being obstructionist here
No, I
relative
mean,
to
let's make
us
this very
providing?
easy. I'll make a motion to zero out his compensation, or we'll just leave Ian as the operator on this motion.
Jeff, you
I mean-
can sign the voucher. You're a deputy
Oh,
Exactly.
Exactly.
So
Evan,
why,
you still sign
So-
them all the time.
so why haven't we created a procedure?
So
Why
again,
aren't we thinking about these things?
are we thinking,
We're
Ms.
thinking.
Miller Herrera offering suggestions relative to how we can do this, or is she being obstructionist? I guess that's the question we're asking. Are you in favor, in my mind, of having these two retired operators that were willing to come out of retirement for us, that have run our system for decades? Are you for that?
I am absolutely in favor of it.
Okay, so now let's go on to the next one. What I believe you're offering us is, hey, have you thought about looking at the conflict of interest here, okay, relative to the supervisor signing a voucher? Is that the question?
I'm asking whether we've created one.
Okay, so when you say have you created, there's a difference between, hey, did I create it, relative to, hey, have we had conversations relative to this? Or are you asking, geez, did we prepare some sort of written document that states that, hey, in the event that this occurs, it will be handled in this manner so that we avoid any ethics violation. Is that correct? Yes?
That was a compound question. You're gonna have to break it up for me.
No. See, there's nothing confusing about it, okay? So the question comes back to you again, as you're asking, and that's why I'm putting it back to you. A two-part question. You got part one. Let's go to part two. Part two is, again, are you asking if we had the conversation, or are you asking, hey, did we prepare some sort of written document the town's going to follow in the event that this situation occurs, so that we can go back to this document to say, hey, this is how this procedure is going to be handled relative to a voucher?
I'm asking whether we have a written procedure so that if there are changes in people on the board, if you are no longer deputy supervisor, if something comes along and changes, there is some procedure in place to ensure that nobody accidentally leaves a voucher on Supervisor Collins' desk.
Okay, so...
I would ask this in any situation. I am always the person to ask these questions.
So very good.
I'm not sure why you're considering me an obstructionist,
No,
because I'm
we
trying to make
appreciate
sure
that.
that
We
we're
appreciate
insulating
that.
ourselves from liability.
So let's just
Ethics
continue.
violations are covered by state law, not necessarily our own. And the town attorney has already indicated that, yes, there are ethics concerns.
Okay, we got that. We understand that. So let's just take the conversation
So the-
further.
No,
because
no,
it's
I want a yes or
communication.
no, Mr. Dodson. Yes or no? Is there a procedure in place? Have we written out a procedure
That
to
is,
deal with
the
this?
answer to that is no. So
Okay,
that's why I'm
that's all I
asking the question. So are you willing, again, in this particular case, if there is a written procedure that basically says that the supervisor is not going to sign the voucher, would you be in favor of having these two retired operators assist us during these periods of time?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I
We
need
can
to
have a
know.
written procedure to ensure that there are no conflicts of interest or ethics violations related to the supervisor's role as it relates to her husband, Claire Collins.
Okay.
If the town attorney wants to prepare something and circulate it, I would appreciate it, although I think that should have been done before we vote on
Would
this
you
issue.
be willing, would you be willing?
Frankly,
to make that motion?
The ethics code says, no town officer shall participate in a decision where there's a conflict.
It
So
already
you
says
want
There's
to
a
that.
prepare, you
financial
want to
benefit to an
prepare,
immediate family member.
you want to prepare another document
I want a
that says the
procedure.
same thing.
No, I want a procedure in place.
So I have no problem with doing it.
Ms. Marco, you are not a member of this board. I need you to stop.
Sam?
Your commentary, you are not a voting member of this board. You are not here for the commentary. You are here as secretary to the board.
Professionalism here, people.
Yes, it would be nice if somebody would answer my question
So,
without
Sam, I
interrogating
think
me or telling me I'm an obstructionist, and it would be nice if I didn't have commentary over my shoulder from the town clerk.
Well, I'm just
Well,
giving you
what?
information.
I don't need your information.
you.
I didn't ask you, I'm asking them.
I asked you.
Please.
You told Jack is not a member of the voting board.
And
What it,
let's go. Jeez.
oh my goodness. I'm not sure why this has to be so difficult and why we're not thinking these issues through. These are all
Can I get a motion?
issues.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it. Motion was made by Councilman Mastriani, seconded by Deputy Supervisor Dodson. Yes, because I think we've done the question sufficiently.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
No.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Supervisor Collins has conducted herself with very high standard of ethics from the time that she's been supervisor. And she was concerned about this appointment for the appearance of it, but her husband is a great resource to the town. And if we need him, and it's my understanding, being second on the line, that we may not even use him, need to use him. And if we do, it'll be in a minuscule amount, but it'd be nice to know that there's no obstruction to be able to use him rather than having to call a more expensive consultant. So my vote is yes.
Okay, so given that obviously the motion and the resolution fails, and again, I would say that I use the word obstructionist for a reason. We can come up with all sorts of reasons why we should not do something for our town. This is a classic example for me of a board member being an obstructionist, and something where I believe that retired water operators are stepping up to the plate to do good work for our, excuse me,
Are we allowed
signing
to
up.
indicate commentary after the end of the motion and voting?
Excuse me.
Well, town attorney, I'd like a ruling on whether under Robert's.
opportunity to speak
What-
right
I
now.
don't think it's yours either.
I am.
Why?
Because I'm in charge of the meeting.
So you just get to
So,
talk
yes, I do right
randomly
there.
and
Bam.
give opinions?
There you go.
Okay.
Jack, can I just?
No.
So please call, you called the roll.
That's what I want to make sure.
Yeah, please call the roll.
Okay. Like I said, we already did, so I
Yep.
just wanted to make sure there's 2 yes,
And
one recused, and 1 absent.
that's correct.
Thank you.
And the resolution fails.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Wait a minute, yeah. You
Yo,
said
can you
it
explain this
failed?
to me? No.
I-
How can there be 2 yeses and 1 no, and it fails, when the majority of the voting members of the board?
Our attorney will
Say
explain,
yes.
sorry, our
Thank you.
attorney will explain. Moving on.
Next is resolution number 90 of the year 2022.
I'm sorry, I thought the town attorney was gonna explain how 2 yeses and 1 no means it fails. I'd like to know, and I'm sure I'm not the only one.
How about if we save that until the end of the meeting, and then maybe under miscellaneous or something, if the town attorney wants to explain something to the people here, he can. But right now, we, okay.
Yeah.
You need a majority of the full board, regardless of recusals, regardless of vacancies, to take action. A majority of the full board is 3.
So,
Not 2.
so you're saying there that 3 voting members is a quorum, or 3 voting members are a quorum, or not?
Correct.
3 voting members is a quorum, and in that case, if you only have 3 members voting, you need to get all 3 votes in favor.
That's it.
Anything else? All right. Resolution number 90 of
I
the
hope we
year,
don't run out of water.
90 of the year 2022, the clerk will read.
To authorize the supervisor to execute a contract with the Art Center and Theater Open Stage Theater.
Anything on, any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
All right. Resolution number 91 of the year 2022, the clerk will read.
To adopt updates to the Schenectady County Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 92 of the year 2022.
To approve budget transfers of the year 2021 year.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll make the second.
Second by Mr. Dodson on the question. Town clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Passes.
Passes.
Resolution number 93 of the year, 93 of the year 2022. Clerk will read.
To approve budget transfers of the 2022 year.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question? Town clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent. Passes.
Resolution number 94 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To authorize an amendment of the professional services contract for Carmen Road Sewer 7 Extension 2.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion? Motion by Ms. Supervisor Collins. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution number 95 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To enact introductory local law number 1 of the year 2022 year.
Version 2.
I'm sorry?
It's local, local
version
law.
2?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question? The clerk will read the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
No.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
3 yes, 1 absent, 1 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 96 of the year 2022.
To enact introductory local law number 2 of the 2022 year.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent. Passes.
Resolution number 97 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To enact introductory local law number 3 of the 2022 year.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent. Passes.
Resolution number 98 of the year 2022.
To enact introductory local law number 4 of the 2022 year.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question? The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent. Passes.
Our next resolution is resolution number 99 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To adopt meeting minutes from the February 9th, 2022 Town Board meeting.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Passes.
Motion passes. Resolution passes.
All right. This concludes our
Madam
resolution.
Supervisor, before we close out on the resolutions, I would make a motion to add resolution 100.22 to amend and restate resolution number 21.22 of the year 2022. And that would be to add water treatment plant operator Ian Bothron at an hourly rate of $35 an hour. And I'd like to speak on it. I believe that the idea and the benefits of having a resident and a retired water treatment operator in our community that can help us and be backup is important. I believe that having a second backup may be important in the future, but I'd like to make sure the procedures are in place to ensure that the supervisor does not have any ethics violations related to that. So I'm looking to do this now so that we can work through the procedural issues and add on the additional person at the next meeting. In the meantime, I'd like to make sure that Ian Bothram is able to proceed forward should Justin Peterson be on vacation, and that we have that backup while not paying an outside contract firm. Although I'm aware that we are still under contract with them, and I haven't seen anything revoking that contract to date, so they would still be in place of their second backup if we needed them in the meantime, which my understanding from hearing what Council Member Mastriani had to say is expected to be a minuscule number of hours. So I make the motion to add Ian Bothram to that to be our backup water treatment plant operator while Mr. Peterson is on vacation, because I think the spirit of the resolution is appropriate, and the idea that anyone is being an obstructionist is just silly.
I'll second it.
Second, the motion was by Ms. Miller Herrera, seconded by Mr. Mastriani. On the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson?
No.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Am I allowed to speak at this point?
Yeah, this doesn't involve your husband.
I'd like to make it perfectly clear that when I came across the 2 invoices for $10,000 to cover a couple of weeks of vacation, I thought it was rather exorbitant, okay? My husband was willing to do it for nothing, but legally you can't do something for nothing for the town because then it looks like you owe them a favor. I discussed this with Council Member Christou, all right? And I knew that Ian lived out of town for half the year. So when he brought up Ian's name, I said, good, that's it. Take my husband off, put Ian on. He said, well, what if something were to happen in the wintertime when Ian was down in Florida? I never really wanted this. It's not like I'm looking for anything. My husband's retired, all right? And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'm very decisive. What do I want to say? There's part of me that wants to say no to it because there isn't anything unethical, about it. I would make sure that I had nothing to do with it, all right? And the other part of it is, do I really need the hassle? It's not like my husband needs the job, or I want him to have the job, or anything else. It's trying to save the town money. So I'm really kind of don't know how to vote here, folks. I'm being perfectly honest with you. Because I can vote yes, and, to heck with it. But then on the other hand, it's like, then I'm not doing what other board members have asked me to do when I said, good, take my husband off and leave Ian on. So do I know whether or not Justin's ever going to take a vacation in December? Do I ever know, God forbid, he's going to get sick? I have no idea. So that's my problem right now. So give me a second and I'll decide whether it's yes or no. And one other thing, and it was made clear to everybody that Ian would be the first call out. I didn't want my husband involved. Okay.
My question was on that,
I'm sorry, Nelson, we got to vote.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to vote no.
So there's 1 absent, 2 yes, 2 no. Correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure. Ms. Miller Herrera, is there anything else? Are there any other motions?
Are we done with that? So that
That's it,
motion
it
fails.
failed.
Like the other one.
Yep.
I have no other motions, Madam Supervisor.
All right, then at that, it concludes the resolutions for tonight, and we'll move on to committee reports. Do any of our board members have any committee reports?
Joe? How about the storm?
Or miscellaneous? Well,
Under miscellaneous, yeah, we got a storm coming. There may be a state of emergency, so I'd like to remind residents to keep the roads clear, to keep the cars off the road. And if you can't move your car, or if you have a neighbor that has a car out by the road, please please let the town or the police department know.
Does anyone else have anything that we can report to Mr.
Yes,
Rainey?
I'll make committee reports again on water and sewer, reminding our residents in the town that, again, our policy and how we bill for services relating to water and sewer changed from the last administration to now. And please keep in mind that there will be a bill coming in June for operation and maintenance, both for the water. Water is all one bill because there was no billing relative to debt service and the budget that passed in the previous administration. In addition to that, there's going to be an on charge on sewer. So keep that in mind. The bill's coming. Save up. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to mention too that the refunds for Sewer District 2 Extension 1 are being processed and they're on their way. I'd like to shout out to Diane Martin in the Receiver of Taxes Department and to the Comptroller, Mr. Sebesta, and his staff on the third floor. They've been working very hard, as well as the supervisor and the deputy supervisor, in getting this situation behind us. So people will be getting their refunds shortly, and the deadline to pay for people that were granted an extension is today without penalty, so hopefully everybody got their payments in on time. And to reiterate what Jack was saying, in June we will be getting the operations and maintenance cost part of the bill. So it's not going to be a typical $75 bill, but it's going to be $157.89 for water service and whatever your operations and maintenance costs will be if you are hooked to a sewer line.
Anyone else? Okay, this concludes our business for tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.